The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the familiar hum of translation devices as delegates from 17 different species settled into their floating discussion pods. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vortanian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes, the crystalline patterns catching the artificial starlight that filtered through the dome above. Today's agenda seemed routine enough: trade disputes, mining rights, the usual bureaucratic dance that kept the galaxy's civilizations from each other's throats. "Next item," announced Council Speaker Morden, her 6 arms gracefully manipulating the holographic display. "Preliminary contact report on species designation Sol 3, commonly referred to as humans." A collective rustle of disinterest swept through the chamber. New species discoveries were common, and most proved to be either primitive or technologically stagnant. The holographic display shimmered, revealing a blue-green world orbiting a modest yellow star in the galaxy's outer rim. "Initial reconnaissance indicates a recently spacefaring civilization," continued Morden, reading from the glowing text that appeared before her. "Carbon-based bipeds remarkably similar to several known species. They've achieved basic faster-than-light travel and have established preliminary colonies in their home system." Ambassador Felnox of the Hegemony Coalition leaned forward in his pod, his tentacles twitching with mild interest. "What's their technological classification? Are they worth formal contact protocols?" The reconnaissance officer, a thin crystalline named Vexari, materialized his report in 3-dimensional detail. "That's where things become interesting, Ambassador. Their technological development is highly uneven. While they lag behind galactic standards in energy manipulation, biotechnology, and defensive systems, they show concerning advancement in what they term kinetic warfare." "Kinetic warfare?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Still throwing rocks at each other, are they? How quaint." "Not exactly, sir." Vexari's crystalline form shifted colors, indicating discomfort. "They've developed something they call railgun technology to an unprecedented degree. Our deep space monitors detected weapons testing that suggest projectile velocities exceeding 12% of light speed." The chamber fell silent. Even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy rarely achieved projectile velocities above 8% of light speed, and those required massive installations with enormous power requirements. "Impossible," scoffed Ambassador Theknari of the Silicon Syndicate, her metallic voice echoing through the chamber. "No primitive civilization could achieve such velocities without tearing their own weapons apart." "Your sensors must be malfunctioning." Vexari's form flickered with indignation. "I ran the calculations 14 times. The humans have somehow developed magnetic acceleration technology that surpasses our own theoretical maximums. What's more concerning is the efficiency. They're achieving these velocities with relatively compact installations." Council Speaker Morden raised one of her primary arms for order. "Even if these readings are accurate, kinetic weapons are hardly a threat to shielded vessels. No civilization has used pure kinetic bombardment for serious warfare in over 3,000 years. With respect, Speaker," Vexari continued, his form now pulsing with urgent orange light, "our war simulations suggest otherwise. At these velocities, kinetic projectiles would penetrate standard deflector shields like they weren't there. The energy transfer upon impact would be catastrophic." Ambassador Kulvex of the Hive Worlds, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, suddenly activated his communication array. His insectoid features were difficult for other species to read, but his pheromone emissions indicated deep concern. "What about their defensive capabilities? Surely they've developed countermeasures." "That's perhaps the most disturbing aspect of their development," Vexari replied. "They appear to have focused almost exclusively on offensive capabilities. Their ships are fast and heavily armed, but their defensive systems are primitive by our standards. It suggests a civilization that expects to strike first and strike decisively." The implications hung heavy in the recycled air of the chamber. Most galactic civilizations had long ago moved beyond purely destructive technologies, focusing instead on defensive systems, energy manipulation, and preservation techniques. The idea of a species dedicating such resources to weapons development was unsettling. "Recommendation?" asked Speaker Morden, though her tone suggested she already knew what it would be. "Continued observation from a safe distance," Vexari stated formally. No direct contact until we better understand their intentions and capabilities. Their recent expansions suggest they'll encounter other species within 50 to 75 galactic standard years. Ambassador Zethkar's laughter filled his pod, a sound like grinding crystals. You're all being paranoid, so they can throw projectiles quickly, so what? One properly equipped battlecruiser could reduce their entire civilization to slag before they could fire a shot. I move to classify them as a minor species and open standard trade negotiations. Seconded, came Thekanari's metallic voice. We're wasting time on a species that hasn't even developed proper energy shielding. The vote was swift and decisive. 14 delegates voted for standard contact protocols, with only 3 supporting continued observation. The humans would be approached within the next standard year for formal diplomatic relations. As the council session ended and delegates began filing out of their pods, Vexari approached Speaker Morden privately. His crystalline form had dimmed to a worried blue-gray. Speaker, I believe we're making a mistake. There's something else about these humans, something that didn't make it into my official report. Morden's attention focused on the intelligence officer. Speak freely, Vexari. Their expansion pattern is unlike anything we've seen before. Most species expand cautiously, establishing communication networks and supply lines. The humans are moving fast, too fast. They're establishing outposts and colonies at a rate that suggests they expect conflict. And their military vessels? They're not exploration ships with defensive capabilities. They're weapons platforms, pure and simple. Your point. I think they're preparing for war, Speaker. Not specific war, but war in general. Their entire civilization seems structured around the assumption that they'll need to fight someone eventually. Speaker Morden considered this information carefully. Even if that's true, Vexari, they're still just one species in a galaxy of hundreds. What threat could they possibly pose to established civilizations with millennia of technological development? As she spoke, neither of them noticed the small data burst that had been quietly transmitted from the reconnaissance probe still monitoring Earth. Deep in the Sol system, human scientists had just completed their first test of a new projectile acceleration system that achieved 15% of light speed. The galaxy would learn soon enough that when humans built weapons, they built them very, very well. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive alien vessel approach through the viewport. The ship was beautiful in its own way, smooth curves and flowing lines that seemed to dance with embedded lights. It looked nothing like the angular, practical designs of human spacecraft. All sharp edges and visible weapon systems. First contact protocol active. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the communications station. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies in what appears to be a standard mathematical progression. Our AI is working on translation. Any sign of weapons? Chen asked, though she kept her voice level. The crew didn't need to know how tense this moment was making her. Negative, ma'am, came the reply from the tactical station. In fact, we're detecting what appears to be sophisticated defensive systems, but no obvious weapons arrays. Their entire ship seems designed around protection rather than offense. Chen nodded, filing that information away. The humans had taken a very different approach to spacecraft design. The Defiance bristled with railgun batteries, missile pods, and the new experimental kinetic bombardment systems that could accelerate projectiles to nearly 20% of light speed. Every human ship was built with the assumption that space was dangerous, and that anything they encountered might be hostile. Translation matrix complete, Captain, Rodriguez announced. They're requesting permission to approach for diplomatic exchange. Grant permission but maintain defensive positions, Chen ordered. And make sure our railgun targeting systems are active but not locked on. We want to be ready, not threatening. The alien vessel, which introduced itself as the diplomatic ship Harmony's Voice, docked with surprising precision. Within an hour, Captain Chen found herself seated across from Ambassador Felnox, whose tentacled form undulated gracefully as he spoke through a translation device. Captain Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to the community of spacefaring species, Felnox said, his translated voice carrying undertones of warmth and diplomatic politeness. We bring greetings from 17 different civilizations and an invitation to join the greater galactic community. Chen studied the alien carefully. Everything about him suggested peaceful intentions, from his flowing robes to the complete absence of anything that could be considered a weapon. We appreciate the welcome, Ambassador. Humanity is certainly interested in establishing peaceful relations with our galactic neighbors. Excellent, Felnox replied, his tentacles curling in what the translation software indicated was pleasure. We've prepared standard trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and technological sharing protocols. Your species shows great promise for peaceful integration. Before we proceed, Chen said carefully, I'd like to understand something about galactic politics. How do disputes between species typically get resolved? Felnox's tentacles stiffened slightly, apparently a sign of surprise. Disputes? Well, the Council mediates most disagreements. We have extensive diplomatic protocols for resource conflicts, territorial disputes, and cultural misunderstandings. Violence between species has been virtually eliminated for over 2 millennia. And if mediation fails? It doesn't, Felnox said, his confusion evident even through the translator. Captain, perhaps I should explain how civilized species conduct themselves. When disagreements arise, we engage in structured debate, economic pressure, or at most, temporary isolation of problematic parties. The idea of actually fighting is considered quite primitive. Chen leaned back in her chair, processing this information. Ambassador, what do you do when you encounter a species that doesn't share these values? One that might be genuinely hostile? Hostile? Felnox's tentacles writhed in agitation. Captain, no spacefaring civilization could develop the technology for interstellar travel while maintaining primitive, aggressive tendencies. The cooperation required for such advancement naturally eliminates warfare. That's an interesting theory, Chen said diplomatically. What's the Council's military capability? Military? The translator seemed to struggle with the concept. We maintain peacekeeping forces for law enforcement and emergency response. Most of our vessels are equipped with defensive systems and crowd control capabilities. Chen felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. Ambassador, when your scouts observed our species, what did they report about our technology? Felnox consulted a holographic display that materialized before him. Standard spacefaring civilization, recently achieved faster-than-light travel, some interesting developments in kinetic acceleration systems. Why do you ask? Those kinetic acceleration systems you mentioned, did your people understand what they were designed for? Scientific research and asteroid mining, presumably, though I admit our technical analysts were impressed by the velocities you achieved. Chen stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the alien ship. It was beautiful, graceful, and completely unarmored. A single railgun shot from the Defiance would cut it in half. Ambassador, I need to be very clear about something. Those kinetic systems weren't designed for mining. They're weapons, very powerful weapons. Felnox's tentacles went rigid. Weapons, but why would you need weapons in space? Because not everyone in the universe is peaceful, Chen said grimly. Ambassador, how large is the Galactic Council's combined fleet? Fleet? We have perhaps 3,000 vessels across all member species, mostly for exploration and emergency response. How many are designed for combat? Combat? Felnox repeated the word as if he'd never heard it before. Captain, I don't think you understand. Space is vast and empty. The only threats are natural phenomena. Asteroid fields, solar flares, navigational hazards. Why would anyone build ships for fighting other ships? Chen turned back to face the ambassador. And for the first time, Felnox noticed something in her eyes that made his species' equivalent of survival instincts trigger. Because sometimes, Ambassador, peaceful intentions aren't enough. Captain, surely you're not suggesting that humanity would engage in aggressive warfare against other species? I'm not suggesting anything about humanity's intentions, Chen replied carefully. But I am telling you that we've built our entire space program around the assumption that we might encounter hostile species. Every human ship is armed. Every human colony is fortified. Every human citizen receives basic military training. Felnox's tentacles were now bright orange, apparently a sign of extreme distress. This is barbaric. No civilized species thinks this way. Maybe that's the problem, Chen said quietly. Ambassador, in all your thousands of years of galactic civilization, has the Council ever encountered a truly hostile species? Of course not. As I explained, such species couldn't achieve what you achieved, Chen interrupted. Ambassador, what if you're wrong? What if there are species out there that developed space travel specifically to conquer other worlds? What if the only reason you haven't encountered them is because your section of the galaxy has been peaceful? The alien diplomat was silent for a long moment, his tentacles cycling through several colors. Finally, he spoke. Captain Chen, are you saying that humanity poses a threat to galactic peace? I'm saying that humanity is prepared for threats to galactic peace, Chen corrected. There's a difference. But Ambassador, I have to ask, if a hostile species did show up tomorrow, what would the Council do? We would attempt diplomatic contact, of course, offer them membership, share our technologies, demonstrate the benefits of peaceful cooperation. And if they responded by attacking your worlds? Felnox's form went completely pale. That couldn't happen. It's unthinkable. It's only unthinkable if you've never had to think about it, Chen said. Ambassador, humanity would like to join the galactic community, but we're going to keep our weapons. As the diplomatic meeting continued, neither Chen nor Felnox noticed the small data packet that the Defiance's sensors automatically transmitted back to Earth. The packet contained detailed scans of the alien vessel's technology, defensive capabilities, and most importantly, its complete lack of offensive systems. On Earth, military analysts would spend the next several months studying this data and reaching a very disturbing conclusion. The galaxy was essentially defenseless. Admiral Marcus Webb stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Council, holographic displays surrounding him showing star charts, ship specifications, and concerning intelligence reports. The gathered representatives from Earth's major nations and colonies sat in tense silence as he began his briefing. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 months have passed since first contact with the Galactic Council, and I'm afraid the situation is more serious than we initially believed. Webb began, gesturing to the nearest display. Our diplomatic and intelligence gathering efforts have revealed that we're not just joining a galactic community, or we're potentially the only armed species in it. Representative Collins from the European Federation leaned forward. Admiral, surely that can't be accurate. How could multiple species achieve interstellar travel without developing military technology? That's exactly what we thought, Webb replied, activating a new holographic display. But the evidence is overwhelming. Every species in the Galactic Council evolved from worlds with abundant resources and minimal evolutionary pressure for warfare. Their development focused on cooperation, scientific advancement, and peaceful expansion. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's lead xenobiologist, stood from her seat. Admiral, the biological and cultural data we've gathered supports this. The Vortanians evolved from herd animals with complex social cooperation instincts. The Silicon Syndicate are essentially living computers that share information collectively. The crystallines exist in a state of constant harmonic resonance that makes violence physically painful for them. What about the others? Asked Representative Jung from the Pacific Alliance. Similar patterns across all 17 species, Dr. Tanaka continued. Evolutionary paths that favored cooperation over competition, abundance over scarcity, peaceful resolution over conflict. They literally cannot conceive of warfare because their species never needed to develop those concepts. Admiral Webb activated another display showing ship schematics. This creates a significant problem for humanity. Their ships are marvels of defensive technology. Energy shields, adaptive armor, automated repair systems that exceed our capabilities by centuries. But they have no weapons, none. Their idea of ship-to-ship conflict resolution is to disable engines and wait for diplomatic teams to resolve whatever misunderstanding occurred. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Representative Williams from the American Federation raised his hand. What's the Council's reaction been to our military technology? Mixed, Webb admitted. Most species view our weapons as curious artifacts of primitive development that we'll naturally abandon as we become more civilized. A few are genuinely disturbed by the concept, but none of them understand the implications, which are, prompted President Martinez from the South American Union. If a genuinely hostile species exists anywhere in this galaxy, the entire Council civilization could be wiped out before they could mount any defense, Webb said bluntly. Their response to any threat is to try to talk to it. They have no concept of preemptive defense, strategic deterrence, or tactical warfare. Dr. Sarah Okafor, Earth's chief military strategist, activated her own presentation. We've run extensive war simulations based on the technology profiles we've gathered. A single human battle group could potentially conquer most Council worlds, simply because they wouldn't know how to fight back. Not won't fight back, can't fight back. They lack the fundamental military concepts. That's a terrifying responsibility, observed Representative Singh from the Indian Federation. Are we essentially becoming the galaxy's military force by default? Worse than that, Admiral Webb replied grimly. Intelligence reports suggest that there are regions of the galaxy the Council simply doesn't explore. Areas they refer to as the dark zones. When we asked about these regions, they claimed there was nothing there, but their explanations were vague and inconsistent. You think there might be hostile species in these dark zones? Asked President Martinez. I think the Council encountered something that scared them badly enough to establish unofficial boundaries, Webb said. But instead of preparing defenses, they simply decided to pretend those areas don't exist. Dr. Tanaka pulled up a galactic map, highlighting the unexplored regions. The pattern is telling. These dark zones form a rough barrier between the Council's territory and the galaxy's outer rim. If hostile species exist beyond these boundaries, the Council might have unconsciously created a buffer zone. Representative Collins stood up, his face pale. Admiral, are you suggesting that we're walking into the middle of a potential interstellar war that neither side knows is coming? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Webb confirmed. The Council species are advanced, peaceful, and completely unprepared for conflict. If aggressive species exist in the dark zones, they've had thousands of years to develop unopposed. The only thing standing between galactic civilization and potential conquest is humanity, a species the Council considers primitive. President Martinez leaned back in his chair. What are our options? Dr. Okafor activated a strategic assessment display. We see 4 possible approaches. First, we could withdraw from galactic society and focus on defending our own territory. Second, we could share our military technology and training with Council species, essentially militarizing them. Third, we could take responsibility for galactic defense ourselves. Fourth, we could investigate the dark zones and determine if the threat is real. What's your recommendation? Asked Representative Zhang. Admiral Webb exchanged glances with his colleagues before answering. All 4 simultaneously. We need to expand our own military capabilities while carefully introducing defensive concepts to willing Council species. We need to position ourselves as protectors rather than conquerors, and we desperately need to know what's in those dark zones. The political implications are staggering, Representative Williams observed. We're talking about potentially becoming the galaxy's military superpower by default. The ethical implications are worse, added Dr. Tanaka. These species welcomed us as peaceful neighbors. How do we tell them that their entire civilization might be in danger without terrifying them? Admiral Webb brought up the final display, a timeline of human military expansion into galactic space. We've already begun quiet preparations. 3 new shipyards are under construction in our outer colonies, specifically designed to build vessels with both human weapons and Council defensive technology. We're training volunteer crews from Council species in basic tactical operations under the guise of emergency response protocols. How are they responding to this training? Asked President Martinez. Better than expected, Dr. Okafor replied. Several species show natural aptitude for strategic thinking, once the concepts are introduced carefully. The hive worlds, in particular, have collective decision-making processes that translate well to fleet coordination. What about resistance to the idea of militarization? Significant among some species, Webb admitted. The crystallines become physically ill when exposed to weapons technology. The Vortanians view any form of aggression as a sign of mental illness, but others, particularly those from worlds with dangerous natural environments, are more adaptable. Representative Singh raised his hand. Admiral, what's the timeline for this potential threat? Unknown, Webb replied honestly. If hostile species exist in the dark zones, they could emerge tomorrow or in 1,000 years. But the concerning factor is the rate of Council expansion. They're growing rapidly, establishing new colonies and trade routes. Eventually, they'll reach the boundaries they've unconsciously established. And then we'll find out what's been waiting for them. The session continued for several more hours, covering logistical details, diplomatic strategies, and contingency plans. But as the representatives filed out, one fact remained clear to everyone present. Humanity had joined a galactic community that was completely unprepared for the reality of an uncaring universe. Admiral Webb remained behind, staring at the galactic map with its ominous dark zones. Tomorrow, he would authorize the construction of humanity's first deep space reconnaissance vessels, equipped with the most advanced stealth technology and weapon systems they could develop. Someone needed to find out what was hiding in the darkness. The galaxy's first line of defense would be human, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. Commander Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair as the UES Shadowhunter dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of what the Galactic Council called the Void Nebula. The name was misleading. There was no nebula here, just an area of space that Council ships avoided with religious fervor. Stealth systems at maximum. All non-essential emissions dampened, reported Chief Petty Officer Kim from the engineering station. We're about as invisible as a ship this size can get. Passive sensors only, Vasquez ordered. I want to know what's out there without announcing our presence. Lieutenant Torres at the sensor station worked quietly for several minutes before looking up with confusion. Commander, I'm detecting massive structures throughout this system. Artificial structures. Define massive. The smallest construct I'm reading is approximately 2 kilometers in length. The largest... Torres paused, recalibrating his instruments. Ma'am, the largest structure appears to be a space station with a diameter exceeding 50 kilometers. Vasquez felt her blood run cold. Humanity's largest space installations were barely 5 kilometers across. Any signs of activity? Significant energy readings, movement patterns consistent with active ship traffic, and... Torres stopped, his face going pale. Commander, I'm detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our database. These aren't kinetic systems like ours or energy weapons like the Council uses. These appear to be some form of matter disintegration technology. How many ships? Conservative estimate based on engine signatures and movement patterns. At least 3,000 vessels in this system alone, ranging from frigate-sized up to... Ma'am, some of these ships are larger than our biggest colonies. Vasquez activated the ship's secure communication array. Begin recording everything. Full spectrum analysis, weapon signatures, ship movements, communication intercepts if possible. This intelligence needs to get back to Earth. The Shadowhunter drifted silently through space for the next 6 hours, its advanced sensors gathering information that would fundamentally change humanity's understanding of the galaxy. What they discovered was worse than anyone had imagined. Commander, Torres called out quietly, I'm picking up what appears to be a communication array. The translation computer is making some progress on the linguistic patterns. What are they saying? It's not good, ma'am. References to something called harvesting operations. Mentions of soft species and undefended territories. The context suggests these are military communications coordinating some kind of expansion. Chief Kim looked up from her console with a grim expression. Commander, based on the energy signatures I'm detecting, these ships appear to be powered by technologies that dwarf anything the Council or humanity has developed. Some of these vessels are generating enough power to supply entire star systems. Weapons analysis? Vasquez asked, though she dreaded the answer. Those matter disintegration weapons I detected earlier? Conservative estimates suggest they could completely sterilize a planet's surface in a matter of hours. We're also seeing evidence of planetary bombardment systems that could crack the crust of inhabited worlds. Lieutenant Torres suddenly stiffened at his station. Commander, we have a problem. I'm detecting a patrol formation approaching our position. 3 vessels, approximately 1 kilometer each, following a search pattern. Can they detect us? Unknown. Their sensor technology appears more advanced than ours. Recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. Vasquez weighed her options quickly. The intelligence they'd gathered was crucial, but losing the ship would mean no one would ever know what was coming. Helm, plot a course out of the system. Minimum engine power, maximum stealth. If we're detected, jump immediately. As the Shadowhunter began its careful retreat, Torres continued monitoring the approaching patrol. Commander, I'm intercepting more communications. The translation algorithm is improving rapidly. What are they saying now? References to the approaching harvest time and expansion into the soft territories. Ma'am, I think they're talking about the Council's space. How long do we have? Torres worked frantically at his console, cross-referencing communication patterns and energy signatures. Based on the activity levels and what appears to be fleet preparation, I estimate they're planning major operations within 2 to 5 standard years. The ship shuddered slightly as they passed through a gravity field generated by one of the massive structures. Through the viewports, the crew could see the alien installation in all its terrifying glory. A space station that looked more like a weapon than a habitat, bristling with unknown technologies and swarming with ships that radiated menace even at this distance. Chief Kim, are you getting readings on their construction capabilities? Yes, ma'am, and it's frightening. They appear to have multiple shipyards capable of producing vessels larger than anything we've ever built. Based on the construction activity I'm observing, they're building approximately one major warship per standard month. How long have they been building? The wear patterns and energy signatures suggest this construction has been ongoing for centuries, possibly millennia. Vasquez closed her eyes briefly, calculating the implications. A hostile species with thousands of years of unchecked military development, advanced technology, and an apparent plan to expand into Council territory. Humanity had stumbled into the middle of a pending genocide. Torres, what else can you tell me about their communications? They refer to themselves as the Devourers, which I assume is a rough translation. They appear to view other species as resources to be harvested, rather than intelligent beings to be negotiated with. References to processing centers and biomass conversion suggest they don't take prisoners. Any indication they know about the Council species specifically? Yes, ma'am. They have detailed intelligence on multiple Council worlds, including defensive capabilities, population centers, and resource values. This isn't random expansion. This is a planned conquest based on extensive reconnaissance. Chief Kim's console chimed softly. Commander, we've gathered everything our systems can handle. Recommend immediate withdrawal before we're detected. Agreed. Helm, get us out of here. Plot a course for the nearest Council observation post. As the Shadow Hunter slipped away from the Devourer fleet, Vasquez began composing her preliminary report. The galaxy was about to face an enemy that the peaceful Council species couldn't even comprehend, let alone fight. Worse, this enemy had been preparing for conquest while the Council built art galleries and research stations. Commander, Torres said quietly, there's something else. The communication intercepts suggest they've been observing Council expansion patterns for decades. They know exactly which worlds are most valuable and which are most defensible. What's their assessment of Council defenses? According to their communications, they classify Council technology as negligible resistance potential. They appear more concerned about navigation hazards than enemy action. The full horror of the situation settled over the crew like a cold blanket. The Devourers had spent millennia preparing for a war that their enemies didn't even know was coming. They had superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and detailed intelligence on every target. Ma'am, Chief Kim said hesitantly, there's one more thing. Based on the energy patterns and construction activity, I believe they're building something much larger than their current fleet. Something that would require the resources of multiple star systems. A superweapon? Unknown. But the scale suggests they're preparing for operations beyond simple planetary conquest. Whatever they're building, it's designed for galactic-level threats. As the Shadow Hunter jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying its terrifying cargo of intelligence back to human space, Vasquez realized that humanity faced an impossible choice. They could warn the Council and risk panic that might lead to premature conflict, or they could quietly prepare defenses and risk being overwhelmed when the attack finally came. Either way, the galaxy's age of peace was about to end violently, and humanity would be caught in the middle of a war between predators and prey, with the uncomfortable realization that the rest of the galaxy saw humans as just another prey species. The real question wasn't whether the Devourers would attack, but whether humanity could prepare adequate defenses before the harvest began. General Patricia Hammond stood in the central command center of Luna Base, watching dozens of holographic displays show the frantic military buildup occurring across human space. 3 months had passed since Commander Vasquez returned with intelligence about the Devourers, and humanity had shifted into a war footing that surprised even their own leaders with its speed and efficiency. Status report on Project Aegis, Hammond called out to her chief of staff. Colonel Martinez approached with a data pad, his expression grim but determined. All 17 new shipyards are operational ahead of schedule. We're producing 1 heavy battleship every 2 weeks, plus supporting vessels. Current fleet strength stands at 83 major combat vessels, with another 40 under construction. Council species integration? Mixed results, Martinez replied. The hive worlds have embraced military cooperation beyond our expectations. Their collective consciousness allows for perfect fleet coordination once they understand the concepts. We now have 12 hive vessels equipped with human weapons and joint crews. Hammond nodded, pulling up tactical displays. What about the others? The Vortanians are struggling with the concept but showing progress. We've managed to convince 3 of their exploration fleets to accept defensive weapon packages by framing them as asteroid deflection systems. The Silicon Syndicate has been our biggest success. They've adapted human railgun technology and improved it by 15%. And the resistant species? The crystallines still refuse any military cooperation. They've established what they call harmony zones around their worlds and insist that peaceful emanations will protect them from any threat. The Aquatic Federation believes their ocean worlds make them naturally defensible. Hammond switched to a galactic map, showing the current disposition of forces. Colonel, show me our defensive positioning. The display shifted to show a 3-dimensional representation of human space and allied territories. Red markers indicated human battle groups, blue showed allied forces, and green represented heavily fortified positions. We've established 3 defensive lines, Martinez explained. The forward line consists of heavily armed observation posts with Council species cooperation. These serve as early warning and delay forces. The second line positions our fastest ships for rapid response and counterattack. The main defensive line protects our core worlds and major Council population centers. What about the dark zones? We've established monitoring stations at safe distances from all known Devourer territories. Long-range sensors indicate continued fleet buildup, but no immediate movement toward Council space. General Hammond studied the displays with the eye of a career military strategist. Assessment of our defensive capabilities against Devourer forces? Colonel Martinez hesitated before answering. Honestly, General, we're outgunned and outnumbered by factors that make conventional victory unlikely. Devourer technology exceeds ours in most areas. Their fleet size is overwhelming, and their willingness to accept massive casualties gives them a significant tactical advantage. However, we have advantages they don't expect. Human tactical flexibility, alliance with species they consider negligible, and most importantly, they're planning for a conquest, not a war. Their intelligence suggests they expect minimal resistance. Hammond pulled up detailed weapon specifications. What about our technological development? The fusion of human kinetic weapons with Council defensive systems has produced results beyond our initial projections. Our new class of battleships can penetrate Devourer shields with concentrated railgun fire, while surviving direct hits from their disintegration weapons. We've also successfully miniaturized Council energy shielding for personal use. Ground forces? Every human colony now has a trained militia, and we've established rapid deployment forces with our allied species. The hive worlds have provided soldiers with natural tactical coordination abilities. Some Council species are showing unexpected adaptability to combat situations. General Hammond activated a communication link to Earth Command. Admiral Webb, what's the status of Operation Prometheus? Admiral Webb's image appeared in the display. Construction of the planetary defense systems is proceeding on schedule. Every major human and allied world now has orbital weapons platforms capable of engaging capital ships. We've also begun construction of mobile fortress stations that can be deployed to threatened systems. And the weapon development program? Our scientists have been working with Vortanian engineers to develop improved versions of our railgun technology. The latest prototypes can achieve 23% of light speed with projectiles that can penetrate any known shielding. We've also made breakthroughs in Council energy manipulation technology. Colonel Martinez added, General, we've also been developing asymmetric warfare capabilities. Human commandos trained by Hive World's tacticians have successfully infiltrated and sabotaged Devourer installations in the dark zones. What did they find? Confirmation of our worst fears. The Devourers are preparing for simultaneous attacks on 47 Council worlds. They've identified key population centers, resource facilities, and what few defensive installations exist. Their plan appears to be complete conquest within 6 standard months. Hammond felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Timeline for their attack? Intelligence suggests they're waiting for completion of their super construction project. Best estimates indicate they'll begin operations within 8 to 12 months. Are we ready? No, Admiral Webb said bluntly. We'll never be ready for what they're planning to throw at us. But we're a hell of a lot more ready than they think we are. General Hammond pulled up the latest intelligence reports from the reconnaissance missions. What about Council species awareness? We've managed to convince most species leaders that increased defensive preparations are necessary due to potential natural disasters and navigation hazards in unexplored regions. Colonel Martinez replied, "Only the senior leadership of our closest allies know the true nature of the threat. How are they handling it? Better than expected." The Hive World's leadership calculated the threat probability and immediately committed their entire civilization to defensive preparations. The Silicon Syndicate is treating it as a complex engineering problem to be solved. The Vortanians are still struggling with the concept, but they're cooperating. Admiral Webb's expression grew serious. "General, we need to discuss the nuclear option." "Elaborate. If defensive operations fail, we have contingency plans for evacuating key populations to prepared fallback positions in human space. We've identified defensible star systems and begun construction of heavily fortified colonies. Worst-case scenario, we could preserve galactic civilization in a reduced form." "What about counter-offensive capabilities?" "Limited but potentially effective," Colonel Martinez replied. "Human ships are faster and more maneuverable than Devourer vessels. If we can survive their initial assault, we might be able to conduct hit-and-run operations against their supply lines and construction facilities." General Hammond studied the tactical projections one more time. "Gentlemen, what are our actual chances of success?" The command center fell silent. Finally, Admiral Webb spoke. "Mathematically, less than 20% chance of preventing significant casualties, perhaps 5% chance of complete victory. And realistically, we're going to lose this war," Webb said quietly. "But we might be able to make it so costly for them that they decide galactic conquest isn't worth the price. Or," Colonel Martinez added, "we might discover advantages we don't know we have yet. Human history is full of situations where superior technology and numbers lost to determination, creativity, and willingness to sacrifice." Hammond nodded slowly. "Then we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Continue all current operations, accelerate weapon production, and begin implementation of the fallback protocols." As the meeting concluded, General Hammond remained in the command center, studying the galactic map. Somewhere in the dark zones, an enemy beyond the Council's comprehension was preparing to harvest entire civilizations. The only thing standing between galactic peace and universal conquest was humanity, a species the galaxy had welcomed as primitive newcomers just months earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her. The galaxy's most peaceful civilizations had created the technology for unprecedented prosperity, while the galaxy's newest and most warlike species was preparing to use that technology to save them all. Whether they would succeed or fail, the age of galactic peace was ending, and humanity would write the first chapter of whatever came next. The first sign of the invasion came not as a dramatic assault, but as silence. Deep space monitoring stations throughout the galaxy's outer rim simply stopped transmitting, their signals cutting off one by one like lights being extinguished across a vast darkness. Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding the human fleet's flagship UES Retribution, stood on the bridge watching the tactical display as red zones spread across the galactic map. Each red zone represented a system that had gone dark in the past 6 hours. 47 monitoring stations offline, reported Commander Torres, now serving as her tactical officer. The pattern suggests a coordinated advance across a 2,000 light-year front. Any distress signals? None, ma'am. Whatever hit them was fast enough to prevent any warning transmissions. Chen activated the fleet communication array. "All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Sentinel is now active. Defensive positions Alpha through Gamma. Execute immediately." Across human space and allied territories, 93 warships began moving toward predetermined defensive positions. The Galactic Council's peaceful civilizations were about to face an enemy that had spent millennia preparing for this moment. On the bridge of the hybrid vessel, Harmony's Fury, Ambassador Felnock struggled to understand the tactical displays that had been installed throughout his ship. The vessel itself was a marvel of cooperation. Hive World's collective intelligence systems, human weapons arrays, Vortanian defensive technologies, and Silicon Syndicate computational cores working in unprecedented harmony. "Ambassador," called out Lieutenant Kim, The human tactical advisor assigned to the ship were receiving confirmed reports of Devourer forces entering Council space. Multiple systems under attack simultaneously. Felnox's tentacles curled in distress. Even after months of preparation, the reality of warfare remained alien to his species. Are there any survivors? Unknown, sir. The attacks appear designed to eliminate communication capabilities first. We're essentially blind beyond our immediate sensor range. What are your recommendations, Lieutenant? Kim studied the tactical display grimly. Sir, we need to begin evacuation protocols for non-essential populations while our combat vessels move to intercept positions. The Devourers are moving faster than our worst-case projections. Meanwhile, deep in the dark zones, Devourer Fleet Commander Vexthok observed the progress of the harvest from the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel designed specifically for planetary sterilization operations. The displays before him showed the systematic elimination of monitoring posts and the rapid advance of harvesting fleets toward high-value targets. Status report, Vexthok commanded, his translated voice carrying the authority of absolute conquest. All forward reconnaissance eliminated as planned, reported his tactical officer. Harvesting fleets are proceeding toward primary targets. No significant resistance encountered. What of the intelligence reports regarding the newcomer species, the humans? Our advanced scouts report their defensive installations are more sophisticated than expected, but still well within acceptable parameters for neutralization. Vexthok studied the tactical displays showing human fleet positions. They appear to be coordinating with several council species. Interesting but irrelevant. Orders for the harvesting fleets? Proceed with standard protocols. Eliminate all resistance, process useful biological material, strip valuable resources. The council species will serve the Devourers well, but as Vexthok spoke, the first Devourer harvesting fleet was approaching the Kepler system, where the combined human hive world's defense force waited and carefully prepared positions. Admiral Chen watched through the viewports of the Retribution. As the enemy fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, the sight was terrifying. Dozens of massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest human ships, their dark hulls bristling with weapon systems that radiated malevolent energy. Confirmed count, 47 Devourer vessels, Torres reported. Multiple capital ships, unknown weapons configurations, energy signatures off the charts. Our response? 23 human vessels, 18 Hive Worlds ships, 12 hybrid vessels. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and outmassed by factors I don't want to calculate. Chen smiled grimly. Then we'd better be smarter. All vessels execute Plan Omega. Let's show these bastards what happens when you threaten our friends. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The Devourers had expected minimal resistance and a quick harvest. Instead, they faced coordinated tactics that their intelligence had never encountered. Human ships, working in perfect coordination with Hive World's vessels, began executing hit-and-run attacks that exploited weaknesses in Devourer formations. Railgun projectiles moving at nearly a quarter of light speed punched through enemy shields that had been designed to stop energy weapons. Hive World's coordination allowed for tactical maneuvers that seemed impossible, with multiple ships moving as extensions of a single mind. Direct hit on their lead vessel, Torres called out, as a concentrated railgun barrage from 6 human ships struck a Devourer capital ship simultaneously. Their shields are down 30%. They're returning fire, warned the sensor operator. The Devourer response was devastating. Matter disintegration beams carved through space where human ships had been moments before, only to find empty vacuum. The human vessels were moving in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated to avoid concentrated fire. Devourer tactical adaptation in progress, Torres observed. They're learning our movement patterns. Then we change the game, Chen replied. All vessels execute Thunderbolt protocol. The human ships suddenly accelerated directly toward the Devourer fleet, their railgun batteries firing continuously. At the last moment, they scattered like a flock of birds, passing through the enemy formation while Hive World's vessels emerged from behind planetary cover to attack the now exposed Devourer flanks. The battle raged for 3 hours. When it ended, the human allied force had destroyed or disabled 17 Devourer vessels while losing only 4 ships. More importantly, they had captured intact Devourer technology and prisoners. Commander Vexthok stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. How did they achieve this level of resistance? Unknown, Commander. Our intelligence indicated minimal defensive capabilities. What of the human technology? Their kinetic weapons exceed our defensive parameters. Their tactical coordination appears to involve some form of collective consciousness, similar to our own but more flexible. Vexthok's expression darkened. Increase fleet deployment to all target systems. If these species wish to resist the harvest, they will discover the full power of the Devourers. But as the order went out, intelligence reports were arriving from 12 other battle sites where human allied forces had achieved similar results. The quick harvest was becoming a protracted war, and for the first time in millennia, the Devourers faced an enemy that fought back effectively. On Earth, General Hammond received the battle reports with grim satisfaction. We've bought ourselves time, but they'll adapt quickly. How are the Council species responding? Better than expected, Admiral Webb reported. The sight of successful resistance has inspired several species that previously refused military cooperation. The crystallines are providing defensive technologies, the Aquatic Federation is opening their worlds as bases, and the Vortanians are sharing their advanced sensor networks. Casualties? Significant but acceptable given what we accomplished. More importantly, we've proven that the Devourers can be beaten. Hammond studied the galactic map, now showing active war zones across dozens of systems. Admiral, we've started something that's going to reshape the entire galaxy. Win or lose, nothing will ever be the same. No, ma'am, but at least now we have a chance. As reports continued flowing in from across the battlefront, one fact became clear. The galaxy's age of peace had ended not with surrender, but with defiance. The Devourers had expected to harvest compliant species, but instead they had awakened something that would fight for every world, every life, and every hope of galactic civilization. The real war was just beginning. 2 years after the first Devourer attack, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the Devourer command station that had once coordinated the harvest of entire star systems. The massive structure, now serving as the headquarters for the Galactic Defense Alliance, bore the scars of the final battle that had ended the war. Final casualty reports. Admiral, Commander Torres handed her a data pad as they walked through corridors that had been rebuilt with a fusion of human, engineering, and council architectural principles. Chen reviewed the numbers with the weight of command that had aged her beyond her years. 17 billion Council species citizens lost across 43 worlds, 12 billion Devourer casualties, 800,000 human military deaths. But we stopped them, Admiral. The harvest fleets are destroyed. Their command structure is broken and their remaining forces have retreated beyond the galactic rim. Chen nodded, but the victory felt hollow given the cost. Status of the reconstruction efforts? Remarkable progress, Torres replied, his voice carrying genuine amazement. The Hive worlds have provided collective labor forces for rebuilding damaged infrastructure. Vortanian healing technologies have accelerated medical treatment for survivors. The Silicon Syndicate has designed new defensive networks that integrate human weapons with Council systems. They entered what had once been the Devourer Strategic Command Center, now converted into the Alliance Council Chamber. Representatives from 19 species sat in a circular arrangement that symbolized the new cooperative approach to galactic governance. Ambassador Felnox, his tentacles now bearing the scars of combat operations, approached Chen with something resembling warmth in his alien features. Admiral, the final vote has been tallied. The Galactic Defense Alliance Charter has been approved by all member species, including the provisions for mandatory defensive capabilities. Yes, though some species required creative interpretations. The crystallines will provide passive defense technologies under the designation of Harmony Preservation Systems. The Aquatic Federation will host rapid deployment bases as emergency response centers. Chen smiled slightly. After 2 years of desperate warfare, even the most peaceful species had learned that survival sometimes required uncomfortable compromises. Dr. Tanaka, now serving as the Alliance's Chief Science Officer, joined the conversation. Admiral, the integration of technologies has produced results beyond our most optimistic projections. Combined Human Council engineering has achieved defensive capabilities that exceed original Devourer technology by significant margins. What about the cultural integration? Fascinating developments, Dr. Tanaka replied, pulling up holographic displays. Human concepts of tactical thinking and strategic planning have been adapted by council species in ways we never anticipated. The hive worlds have developed individual initiative within their collective consciousness. The Vortanians have learned to channel their cooperative instincts into military coordination. And humans? We've learned patience and long-term thinking from species that plan in millennia, rather than decades. Council biotechnology has extended human lifespans and improved our adaptation to different environments. Most remarkably, we've developed diplomatic solutions to conflicts that would have previously resulted in warfare. Chen walked to the viewing port that looked out onto a bustling space station where ships from dozens of species worked together in ways that would have been impossible 3 years earlier. Human warships with sleek council modifications docked alongside hybrid vessels that represented the new cooperative approach to technology. General Hammond's final report? Chen asked. Earth Defense Command has been restructured into the Alliance Military Academy. Torres replied. We're training officers from all member species in combined tactical operations. Interestingly, several species show natural aptitudes for specific military functions we never expected, such as crystallines, despite their aversion to violence, make excellent strategic planners due to their harmonic thinking processes. Vortanians are natural logistics coordinators. The Silicon Syndicate has developed cyber warfare capabilities that surpass anything humans achieved independently. Ambassador Felnox activated a galactic map showing the current state of Alliance territory. Admiral, I must admit that the human approach to governance has been educational. Your insistence on preparing for unknown threats has led to discoveries that benefit all species. What kind of discoveries? Exploration of former devourer territories has revealed technologies and resources that could advance galactic civilization by thousands of years. More importantly, we've identified other potential threats in unexplored regions and are prepared to address them cooperatively. Chen studied the map, noting the new defensive installations, exploration fleets, and colony ships spreading throughout previously dark regions of space. What about the devourer survivors? Approximately 40,000 individuals across several scattered fleets, Dr. Tanaka reported. The initial contact suggests they're willing to negotiate. Apparently, their entire cultural structure was based on the assumption of easy conquest. Facing determined resistance has fundamentally altered their worldview. Recommendations? Cautious integration, Torres suggested. Their technology and knowledge of the outer galaxy could be valuable, but their cultural rehabilitation will require extensive cooperation with council specialists. Chen turned back to the assembled representatives, many of whom bore visible evidence of the war they had never expected to fight. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, the Alliance has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. We've not only survived an extinction-level threat, but emerged stronger than before. The chamber fell silent as species that had spent millennia in peaceful isolation considered the implications of their transformation. The human military philosophy has been proven correct, continued Chen. Preparing for the worst-case scenario doesn't create conflict, it prevents it. But council wisdom has also been validated. Cooperation and understanding achieve more than conquest and domination. Ambassador Felnox stood, his tentacles arranged in what Chen had learned was a gesture of deep respect. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request that humanity assume permanent leadership of Alliance defensive operations. That's not how this should work. Ambassador, Chen replied diplomatically. The Alliance succeeds because every species contributes their strengths. Humans provide military expertise, but we're not qualified to lead scientific research, cultural development, or long-term planning. Then what do you propose? Rotation of leadership based on the specific challenges we face. Military threats require human command structure. Scientific exploration benefits from Silicon Syndicate coordination. Diplomatic initiatives succeed under Vortanian leadership. Cultural integration works best with hive worlds' collective decision-making. The concept was revolutionary. A galactic government that adapted its leadership to match current needs rather than maintaining static hierarchies. The vote? Chen asked. The chamber's translation systems buzzed with discussion as representatives consulted with their home governments. Within an hour, the result was unanimous. The Adaptive Leadership Protocol is approved, Felnox announced. The Alliance will face whatever challenges await us with the best qualities of all member species. As the session concluded, Chen remained in the chamber looking out at the galaxy that had been forever changed by humanity's violent introduction to galactic politics. The peaceful age was over, but what had replaced it might be even better. An age where civilizations prepared for the worst while working toward the best. 3 years earlier, humanity had been a primitive species joining a galaxy of peaceful neighbors. Today they were partners in a galactic alliance that had survived its first existential threat and emerged ready for whatever the universe might throw at them next. The age of prepared peace had begun, and it would be defended by railguns and diplomacy in equal measure. Torres, Chen said as they prepared to leave the chamber, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're no longer humanity's military force in a peaceful galaxy. We're the galaxy's military force and we're finally home. Outside the viewport, ships from 19 species worked together to build a future that no single civilization could have imagined. The galaxy had learned to fight, but more importantly, it had learned to fight together. The warnings had been ignored, the threat had come, and when it was too late for anyone else to prepare, humanity had been ready for all of them.